Chapter 13. Astral Plane Occupation. Regarding the question of occupation in the heaven world, the astral plane, the following from a well-known writer on the subject, Mr. A.P. Sinnett, will prove interesting and instructive. Readers, however, who may grant that a purview of earthly life from heaven would render happiness in heaven impossible, may still doubt whether true happiness is possible in the state of monotonous isolation now described. The objection is merely raised from the point of view of an imagination that cannot escape from its present surrounding. To begin with, about monotony. No one will complain of ever having experienced monotony during the minute or moment or half hour, as it may have been, of the greatest happiness may have enjoyed in life. Most people have had some happy moments, at all events. To look back to for the purpose of this comparison, and let us take even one such minute or moment, too short to be open to the least suspicion of monotony, and imagine its sensation immensely prolonged without any external events in progress to mark the lapse of time. There is no room in such condition of things for the conception of weariness. The unalloyed, unchangeable sensation of intense happiness goes on and on, not forever, because the cause which have produced it are not infinite themselves, but for a very long period of time until the efficient impulse has exhausted itself. Another high authority on the subject, quoted by Sinnett, says, "The moral and spiritual qualities have to find a field in which their energies can expend themselves. Devachan, the higher astral plane, is such a field. Hence all the great planes of moral reform, of intellectual research into abstract principles of nature, all the divine spiritual aspirations that so fill the brightest part of life, in Devachan come to fruition, and the abstract entity occupies itself in this inner world. Also of its own preparation and enjoying the effects of the grand beneficial spiritual causes sown in life, it lives a purely and spiritually conscious existence, a dream of realistic vividness, until karma, being satisfied in that direction, the being moves into its next era of cause, either in the same world or another, according to its stage of progression. Therefore there is a change of occupations, a continual change in Devachan, for that dream life is but the fruition, the harvest time of those psychic germs dropped from the tree of physical existence in our moments of dream and hope, fancy glimpses of bliss and happiness, stifled in an ungrateful social soil, blooming in the rosy dawn of Devachan, and ripening under its ever-fructifying sky. If man had but a single moment of ideal experience, not even then could it be, as erroneously supposed, the indefinite prolongation of that single moment. That one note struck from the lyre of life would form a keynote of the being's subjective state, and work out into numberless harmonic tones and semitones of psychic phantasmagoria. They are all unrealized hopes, aspirations, and dreams, become fully realized, and the dreams of the objective become the realities of the subjective existence. And there, beyond the curtain of Maya, its vaporous and deceptive appearances are perceived by the infinite, who has learned the great secret how to penetrate thus deep into the arcana of being. The same authority continues, to object to this on the ground that one is thus cheated by nature, and call it a delusive sensation of enjoyment which has no reality, is to show oneself utterly unfit to comprehend the conditions of life, and being outside of a material existence. For how can the same distinctions be made in Devachan, i.e. outside of the conditions of earth life, between what we call a reality and a fictitious or an artificial counterfeit of the same, in this our world? The same principle cannot apply to the two sets of conditions. The spiritual soul has no substance, nor is it confined to one place with a limited horizon of perceptions around it. Therefore, whether in or out of its mortal body, it is ever distinct and free from its limitations, and if we call its devonic experiences a cheating of nature, then we should never be allowed to call it reality, any of these purely abstract feelings that belong entirely to, and are reflected and assimilated by, our higher soul. Such, for instance, is an ideal perception of the beautiful, profound philanthropy, love, etc., as well as every other purely spiritual sensation that during life fills our inner being with either immense pain or joy. Surely to the aspiring soul there is a far greater happiness in the thought of a heaven world in which shall be worked out the problems of this life, in which the creative impulse shall be given full opportunity for unfoldment and development, to the end that in a newer and fuller life to come there shall be a putting forth of blossom and fruit, of heart's desire come true, of ideals made real, than in a heaven of the cessation of unfoldment and creative endeavor. where all is finished, where there is nothing to be done or created, where there is no occupation but to fold hands and enjoy the bliss of eternal idleness. The creative instinct is from the very nature of itself, the throbbing of our own lifeblood, for nature is ever at work, creating, doing, performing, becoming, making, achieving, forever and ever and ever, on and on and on, without ceasing, rising from greater to greater achievement, as the eons of time fly by. Verily, this alone is life, and all other life is living death, a land where none by phantoms dwell, a wind, a sound, a breath, a voice, the tinkling of the camel's bell. And yet so grounded in materiality is the world of men, that they would speak of the heaven world of the higher astral plane as a mirage, a mere dream, a phantasm. They consider nothing real unless it is on the material plane. Poor mortals, they do not realize that, at the last, there can be nothing more unreal, more dreamlike, more transitory, more phantasmal than this very world of material substance. They are not aware that in it there is absolutely no permanence, that the mind itself is not quick enough to catch a glimpse of the material reality, for before the mind can grasp a material fact, the fact has merged into something else. The world of mind, and still more true, the world of spirit, is far more real than it is a world of materiality. From the spiritual viewpoint, there is nothing at all but real spirit, and matter is regarded as the most fleeting and unreal of all illusory appearances. From the same viewpoint, the higher in the scale one rises above the material plane, the more real becomes the phenomena experienced. Therefore it follows that the experiences of the soul on the higher astral plane are not only not unreal in nature, but by comparison are far more real than the experiences of life on the material plane. As the writers just quoted have well said, nature is not cheated on the astral plane, but nature herself manifests with more real effect on that plane than on the material plane. This is a hard saying for the uninitiated, but the advanced soul becomes more and more convinced of its truth every succeeding hour of its experience. It is a grievous error to regard the experience of the soul in the heaven world as little more than a plane at reality, as some materialist critics have termed it. One has but to turn to the experiences even of the earth life to see that some of the world's best work is performed in the hours other than those employed in the actual fashioning of the things. There are times in the everyday life of the most active workers of the world, which may be called the ideal period. That is the time in which the mind creates and forms that which is afterward manifested in material work. There has never been a building, nor a bridge, nor any other great work of human hands erected, unless first it has been created in the mind of some man or men. It has had its first existence in the creative faculties of the mind. The material building is merely the reproduction of the mental creation. This being remembered, which shall we consider the real creation, the mental or the material? The soul, in its activities of the higher astral plane, performs a work similar to that of the mind of the inventor, designer, and builder, when it fashions and designs that which will afterward be objectified in material form. It may be called the period or stage of forming the model, or pattern or mold, which shall afterward serve for the material manifestation. Ignorance alone can conceive of such a stage of existence as being a mere dream. Verily, the scales of matter serve to blind the eyes of man, so that he sees the real as the unreal as the real. The higher in the scale of existence a soul rises, the more real are its experience. The nearer it approaches matter in its descent on the scale, the more unreal are its experiences. Ah, Maya, Maya, thou mother of illusion, when shall we learn to rise above thy spell? Those who play in the clay are besmirched by it, and can see nothing finer and higher than its sticky substance. End of chapter.